Hi guys, and welcome back to another quick Photoshop tutorial. My name is Manny, and in this post I would like to show you guys all the different layers and also talk a little bit about the different layers. If you're still new to this tutorial, please fall back on last week's tutorial where we showed you guys how to work with the complete layers panel and where we covered all the small little buttons over here. Okay, so let's get started with today's tutorial. As you guys can see, I've still got my other image here imported and I'm still on a normal basic layer and it's unlocked. And first of all, what I want to do is basically just quickly crop this image here a little bit so we can have things a little bit bigger. Okay, so I'm going to drag all my crop tool just quickly over here and going to accept this. Yes, and now we have cropped this. Okay, move this a little bit into the center and a little bit bigger so we can see what happens to our basic layer and also to see things a little bit bigger. Okay, so let's get started with a first empty layer. We'll basically go down here to the new layer icon, select that, and directly you'll see here at the top we have a complete new empty layer renamed to layer 1. I'm going to double click on here and just rename that to empty layer. Okay, so we all know that is our empty layer. Now basically an empty layer is there to add more things to your image, and then you're able to actually tweak that individually again. So let me quickly show that to you guys. If I'll go over here to the brush, black foreground color and also 100 opacity, I'm now able to paint on this layer and also do things separately to the layer. Okay, so first of all I'm just going to really roughly with a soft brush paint on the background here to just darken the background a little bit. Okay, not worrying too much if I paint over the person, not the proper way, but just showing you guys quickly how to work with this. Okay, so paint over here, and we have now applied this to a empty layer over here, and now we're actually able to go over to our move tool and move this layer around. First of all, if I press Command Z, moving that back to our original position, and now I'm also able to change my opacity here from the top. So first of all, I can dim this a little bit or take this a little bit down to say 34%, and also if I want to I can keep that at 100% or just change my blending options. So let's change that to soft light, and over here you can directly see the soft light does a good effect to the person and also applies a pretty good effect to the background. If it's still too strong, I can then again tweak my opacity a little bit and also let that effect just being applied a very subtle onto the background here. So over here again, an empty layer, very simple and easy to work with empty layers if you want to add more things to your say basic layer over here. Okay, so if you want to add some brushes or if you want to add certain effects, I would recommend working on an empty layer so you can add that on top of your basic layer. If we say for instance go now over to a basic layer, let me just take that all the way to the top, and if we do exactly the same effect to our normal basic layer with a brush again and also paint that over here with 100 opacity, soft brush, we are directly applying this effect onto this basic layer and we cannot go back and tweak that again. So over here you would have to work really fine and more carefully, and also this will take way longer. So I recommend working on an empty layer where you can change things way quicker and also work quicker, because now on your basic layer, if we take the opacity down, we'll obviously take the whole opacity down from this basic layer. And also if we change the blending options to overlay, nothing really happens because we don't have anything underneath of it. So if you're working on a basic layer, you would have to work way more carefully. So I recommend working on an empty layer is way better. Okay, so let's just quickly go back in here, our history panel. I just want to go back a few steps. So we have nothing painted on our basic layer. Okay, so let's go over to our next layer, which will be the basic layer converted to a smart object. At the moment, as you guys can see, still on the basic layer, if I say for instance have the brush over here now, you will see that I'm able to paint on this, right? If I also go over to the clone tool, I'm also able to work with the clone tool. If we convert this now to a smart object, you will see that on the smart object layer we are not able to use these tools, but if we use filters, those smart objects are better again. So let's quickly do that. Over here, basic layer, I'm just going to take that and drag that all the way to the new layer icon, drop that, and directly you will see that we have a new basic layer and set to copy. So first of all, I want to just take out the copy, say plus smart object, so we all know that is our smart object. Okay, set that to smart object, and first of all what I want to do now is convert that to a smart object. So I can either now right click onto my layer here or go back to the layer palette here at the top and then go all the way down to smart object and say convert to smart object. So let's convert that to a smart object, select that. Directly you'll see that we have a small icon down here which basically means that we have converted this layer now to a smart object. Okay, so now if I go over to my tools over here, as I said before, have a look. Here we have the no go icon. It's not working on this layer, so we can't use any of these tools on this layer. So that's a bit of a downer. But if we're working with filters now, this is a pretty handy technique to either convert your images or your basic layers first to a smart object, because if we're applying a filter now, we can always go back and change that again. Let me quickly show that to you guys. If I go over to the basic layer, go back to filter here, blur, gauge and blur, apply that at say 106 pixels, say OK, you can directly see that our basic layer here is completely blurred. Why aren't we seeing the effect? Obviously because our top layer is still blended in. So blending that out, we can now see our basic layer here is completely blurred, and also this filter has been applied directly to this layer. If I say, for instance, do exactly the same effect to a smart object layer, go again to filter, blur, gauge and blur, again 106 opacity or radius pixel here, and blur that as well, you will directly see that this has been blurred as well. But now we do have a small option down here under the smart object layer. So that is another option where you can either turn on the filter at all, or you can go back into the gauge and blur and tweak again your pixel radius down here. So again, I can say take that down to a 5 and say OK that, and that filter has again been changed, and now we do have another different effect on our layer. Whereas as a basic layer, we can't do anything. That filter has been applied and it will look just like this. So that's a bit of a downer. If you're working on normal basic layers using filters, you can't go back later and change that again. So again, another good hint, if you're working with smart objects, then you can use filters. But also if you want to use now these clone tools or brush tools, these won't work on smart objects. So again, working on basic layers and smart objects is handy in both ways. Okay, so let's just go back in our history panel here and convert that back to a converted smart object. So we have no filters applied. Let's apply just one filter to the smart object, filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and we're going to apply that filter effect again. Over here on the right hand side, also a small tab here, we can hide the effects then again, and we have more space in our layers panel. Okay, let's turn the smart filter off here, and we can also then minimize our layers again. Okay, so these are the layers until up to now. Please switch over now to the second video lesson where I'm going to continue with the layers. Sorry for this, but otherwise the tutorial's just going to get way too long.